Hello and welcome to the Narc Alert, the channel where we look at YouTubers and others to see if they demonstrate any traits that fall within the spectrum of narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. These videos are for fun and entertainment purposes only, strictly my opinion, and remember, please don't send any snark to our possible narcs. So key points to remember: messy fun, and not a diagnosis. Hello my lovely alerts and welcome back to the Narc Alert. Happy New Year's Day. I thought it might be fun today to while away some time with the ladies of narcissism. Let's take a look back at some of our Narc Alert looks at Anna Sorokin, also known as Anna Delvey, the New York socialite who took so many people for so much money. Elizabeth Holmes, the Steve Jobs wannabe, who started a blood testing company and ended up in jail. And Amber Heard. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's trial kept so many of us captivated this year. I thought it was worth a look back at one of her interviews. So put up your feet or put us on in the background and let's just dive in to the ladies of narcissism. In this video, we're going to take a look at Anna Sorokin. Anna, who is also known as Anna Delvey, was a fake heiress who conned a good deal of New York City's wealthiest by pretending to be a German heiress with a trust fund that paid for a life of glamour. She lived in boutique hotels, wore designer clothes, and hung out in Manhattan's toniest circles. Anna was born in Russia to German parents. At the age of 19, she left home for Paris in pursuit of a fashion degree. Not much is known of her parents, only that she speaks of them as being very conservative, and they did not show up at her trial. In Paris, she changed her name to Anna Delvey and worked shooting photographs for Purple, a fashion, art, and culture magazine. In 2013, she took off for New York. Anna was enamored with New York and found more friends than she did in Paris, so she decided to stay. For a while, she worked at Purple's New York office, but eventually she quit. Many have pinpointed this as the moment when Anna Delvey became a full-fledged grifter. She handed out generous $100 tips as she moved from boutique hotel to boutique hotel to keep her image intact. There was always promises of money that never materialized. She came up with the idea of a private club that she called the Anna Delvey Foundation. It was to have exclusive memberships and rotating arts exhibits. She was feeling pressure to open the club in order to attract more investors, so in late 2016 she returned to Germany for a short period of time. She worked out the details of her foundation and created 4 surprisingly realistic bank statements in Photoshop. When she returned to New York, she would use those documents again and again to procure loans. She did end up with a $100,000 line of credit from one bank, but things were starting to fall apart. She was first arrested in 2017 for skipping out on thousands of dollars of hotel bills and lunch bill of about $200 at La Parker Meridian Hotel. In that same year, she had deposited $160,000 worth of fraudulent checks into a bank account. She had invited friends on an all-expenses-paid trip that she ended up leaving them with a $62,000 bill for. And when she returned to New York after that trip, she jumped from hotel to hotel, accumulating bills in the tens of thousands of dollars. At this point, 2 of the hotels pressed charges against her for theft of services. She was also being investigated independently by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for bank fraud. In August of that year, the grand jury was convened and indicted her on counts of grand larceny in the first degree, 3 counts of grand larceny in the second degree, 1 count of grand larceny in the third degree, and 1 count of misdemeanor of theft of services. In 2019, at the trial, after deliberating for 2 days, the jury found Anna Sorokin guilty of 8 charges. In May of 2019, she was given a sentence of 4 to 12 years in state prison, fined $24,000, and ordered to pay restitution of about $199,000. Anna Sorokin was released from prison on February 11th in 2021. She started to enjoy a little notoriety, but in March 2021 she was taken back into custody by ICE, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement, for overstaying her visa. As of April, she's being held in New Jersey, and she's awaiting deportation to Germany. Anna seems to feed on publicity, whether it's good or bad. She has had her story made into a Netflix series. One of her victims has written a book about her. There's more television rights in the works, a partially dramatized podcast, and she's been on 2020 magazine and 60 Minutes Australia. Let's take a look at a couple of interviews and see how our little charmer is doing.
It's like I had no idea what was going on, so just like I kind of like did things.
So you weren't that calculated?
No. I don't see myself exactly as a ladder climber. No, I was just kind of doing whatever I wanted at the time.
So you just wanted to go straight to the top?
Kind of, yes.
Like most people with traits of NPD, she is entitled and special. She came from humble beginnings from all accounts, but felt entitled to be at the top of society without earning it.
Why waste my time? Just knowing the people who were at the top, they just, I don't know. Yeah, it's like they did not strike me as too smart or like too talented, so I felt like, why?
She had determined that she was, of course, smarter and better than the people she longed to be part of, so therefore she was justified in what she did to them. She deserved their lifestyle more than they did.
You flashed a lot of cash during this.
No, I did not actually. I barely have any cash, ever. I never have like more than a couple $1,000s at most on me.
People talked about you tipping wildly.
Well, people are
Uber
ridiculous,
drivers,
yeah.
tipping concierges $100 at a time. I mean, was that part of the allure that people saw a little bit of money and they thought you had a lot more?
Well, if someone is impressed by a $100 bill, I don't know what to tell them.
Narcissists like to belittle or look down on people they see as inferior. They can come across as conceited, boastful, and pretentious. I think she's ticking a lot of the boxes here.
You led them to believe that you had a trust fund with millions of dollars in it and it would be accessed when you turned 26.
How did I lead them to believe? It's like, how do I lead someone to believe how much money I have?
Are you telling me now that you never told anyone that you were an heiress?
Why would I tell them how much money I have?
She presented a very carefully cultivated facade for people, telling them she was awaiting an inheritance, living in boutique hotels, tossing around $100 tips, despite having no money. Here she's arguing semantics to distract. He asks about her saying she is an heiress, and she responds with, "Why would I tell them how much money I have?"
First of all. Second of all, it's like no one in New York cares. You cannot impress anyone with 50 million, 60 million, I don't know, maybe with $1 billion for a bit, but then like, no one cares. This is what people fail to understand.
Did you have a job?
Yes, I was a CEO of my company. I was supposed to be like an art center with an exhibition space.
And that was the foundation that you tried to get the $22 million fraudulently, as it turns out, from the bank.
Why you seem so amused about this?
Narcissists can be preoccupied with fantasies about success, power, and exaggerate accomplishments. She seems very amused and proud of herself for pulling such a stunt off, and seems to be fishing for him to acknowledge that, in my opinion.
Sold the story and they bought it. Hook, line and sinker.
I mean, because the story was true.
Only a delusional narcissist could look at this story and double down on saying it was all true. There is so much evidence, witnesses, bank records. She served time. But it was true.
It wasn't that hard. Like, I did have this project and I did have this vision, and it probably would have worked out if I did have the money, so.
But you didn't have the money. That's why the project was no good.
If I would have gotten the money from the bank.
If looks could kill, it is almost as if she's insulted that he laughed at her project, which, without any cash behind it, is just a fantasy. She doesn't see it like that. She's superior. Her ideas are superior, and the fact that no one funded her is not her fault.
The whole Anna Delvey Foundation, your whole business, was just this house of cards. It wasn't real, Anna.
So many businesses are just a house of cards. You just don't know about it.
Rachel Deloche Williams was Anna's next target. For once, though, a victim had the last laugh. Rachel turned her ordeal into a best-selling book.
In her little book that no one reads. I don't know. I never thought, like, that's none of her business. She's just some random girl in her 20s. Like, anyone who knows me doesn't believe any of that stuff. She's a photo editor at a fucking fashion magazine. Like, it's none of her business how much money I have.
Anna had Rachel pay the entire $62,000 for an all-inclusive Marrakesh vacation that she had invited Rachel on. She had card issues before they left and swore to Rachel that she would of course repay her. She never did. She further tries to put down Rachel and her little book as being an effing fashion editor, a job she formerly coveted.
Pretty tough place, Rikers, isn't it?
You could say so, yeah.
Did it affect you? Has it had long-term effects?
Of course, yeah. I never regret going there. I thought it was like an invaluable experience. I could have never created like anything like this for myself. So I did learn a lot from going there.
You don't regret going there, did you say?
No, absolutely not. I would never like want to like just cut out that experience from my system.
A need to always look good is key to a narcissist's life. One way to accomplish this is to appear as if you run the show and be as assertive as possible. Grandiose narcissists often want to look immodest and fearless. She is spinning Rikers, one of the state's worst prisons, as a great time.
Do you see this whole thing as a victimless crime?
I don't see this case as a crime at all. How about that?
How can you not see it as a crime?
What was that so criminal that I've done?
In a bad way, didn't they?
I mean, that's their problem. They said all kinds of things about me. It should not come as a surprise because my whole background is in art and fashion. Is that really so surprising? I care about clothes. At the time when I went to trial, I was, in jail for about 19 months, something like that. And then that's the only thing I could have. I couldn't even have like any makeup or hair products. Clothes were the only thing you can get. Your own new clothes every night that you go to trial. So I just thought that's what I was going to do. That was the only thing I had in my control.
Ah, a grain of truth. She had lost control over almost everything but her clothes for trial, this is true. Recall, though, she had a jury trial, and often defendants and their lawyers will try subtle ways to sway the jury, often with the appearance of the defendant. Anna hired a personal stylist and was seen in a paper daily.
Nobody in their right mind is going to be doing business with you in the future, are they?
Well, I guess there are a lot of people who are not in their right mind in New York.
Your lawyer has described you as a role model.
Oh, thank you. I wouldn't say I'm a role model. I guess like I'm trying to change the narrative right now, and like I'm trying to turn all this attention I'm getting and all the opportunities I've been given towards something good.
Well, that's encouraging.
Thank you.
Because I would have thought that being a role model was something that you are most certainly not. I mean, you wouldn't want people to aspire to be a fraudster, would you?
I'm not a fraudster, so I wouldn't know.
People with NPD expect special treatment and take advantage of others to get what they want. They are conceited and they think others envy them. Of course, she is a role model, not an ex-con charged with grand larceny.
You want to stay in New York?
Of course, I love New York.
Why do you want to stay there?
Why
after all
not?
this?
Why? No one has, like, aside from prosecution, even not them, no one has actually, like, done anything bad to me. Why would I be upset at anyone? It turned out pretty well.
Until it didn't.
Well, it didn't turn out very well for you. You ended up in jail.
I felt like I just did I had all these amazing experiences, and I'm going to write a book about it, so I don't regret it personally.
She will not take any responsibility for her actions. She has even served time for her crimes and still will not admit to any wrongdoing. She has no idea at this point that her ordeal is not over.
No, it's just like not the same as Rikers. Rikers is just happening. Well, hopefully I won't have to be here for too long. Germany is worse than jail.
March 25th, ICE detained Sorokin because she had overstayed her visa. An immigration court ruled that she should remain in custody pending deportation. Months later, Sorokin has not been deported to Germany. She remains detained. Her attorney, Audrey A. Thomas, has appealed the removal order.
I don't care what you think of me. I don't need your approval. I don't need to impress.
Do you feel bad about some of the people that got burnt along the way?
Can you name me the names of the people? And I'll tell you if I feel bad about them.
She doesn't care what others think, as she is so much better than the rest of us. Our input is not needed. She also has little empathy or thoughts of others' feelings. Although far from definitive, this list of common narcissistic traits supplied by the Mayo Clinic shows us she hits almost every single point. Hello and welcome to the Narc Alert. In today's video, we're going to look at Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes emerged on the tech scene around 2003. Her story was a good one. She was a woman and she was building a company that had a mission to change the world of health sciences. As early as her first year at Stanford University's School of Chemical Engineering, she had begun to transform herself into her idol Steve Jobs. She would boast of never taking a vacation, she wore black turtlenecks, and she would become vegan. She often referred to a letter that she purportedly wrote to her father at the tender age of 9, where she states, "What I really want out of life is to discover something new, something mankind didn't know was possible to do. And it was this instinct," she said, coupled with a fear of needles, that led her to come up with Theranos. Theranos was founded in 2003 when Elizabeth was just 19 years old and dropped out of Stanford University. Theranos exploded as a breakthrough health technology company with claims of having devised blood tests that used only very small amounts of blood and that could be performed really quickly using proprietary technology that they had developed and a machine dubbed the Edison using nano containers. The company raised $700 million from venture capitalists and hit a peak valuation in 2014 of $10 billion. 40 Edison machines were placed into Walgreens pharmacies, and Elizabeth Holmes was riding high as the darling of Silicon Valley. Things started to unravel in October of 2015 when various professors discovered there were no peer-reviewed studies for her technology. Most of the claims were exaggerated, and many of the tests they had purported to run had been sent to regular labs. The Wall Street Journal wrote a scathing article, and the downfall started to freefall. In March 2018, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission charged Theranos, its CEO Elizabeth Holmes, and former President Ramesh Sunny Balwani, claiming they had engaged in an elaborate years-long fraud and deceived investors into believing that its key product, the Edison machine, could conduct comprehensive blood tests from finger drops of blood. Elizabeth Holmes settled with the SEC, paying $500,000 and forfeiting 19 million shares of company stock. She's also been barred from having any leadership position in any public company for 10 years. On June 15, 2018, Holmes and Balwani were indicted on multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. It is alleged that the defendants were aware of the unreliability and inaccuracy of their products, but hid the information. If they are convicted, they could each face a maximum fine of $250,000 and 20 years in prison. That trial has commenced this week. We are going to take a look at an interview Elizabeth Holmes did with Jim Cramer on his show Mad Money on CNBC. Before we jump into that, I want to take a look at Elizabeth's obsession with Steve Jobs. Some of the ways Elizabeth Holmes tried to copy Steve Jobs included wearing his signature style of black turtleneck because a former Apple employee told her to. She frequently referred to Theranos' blood testing systems as the iPod of healthcare, and even nicknamed one of the systems the 4S. She used the same advertising agency, Chiat Day, because it was the same company that Apple used. She insisted on having a security detail drive her around in a black Audi sedan with no license plates. Steve Jobs used to lease a new Mercedes every 6 months to avoid having license plates. She even started borrowing the management techniques described in Steve Jobs' biography. Employees of Theranos said they could pinpoint exactly which chapter she was on based on which period of Jobs' career she was impersonating. She also famously used a fake baritone voice in order to be taken more seriously.
No, it hasn't. Well, if I use traditional words to describe what we're doing, it's hard.
Now, the interview that takes place days before Walgreen pulled support and things started to fall apart.
In the article, Ms. Holmes, welcome back to Mad Money.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, I have to tell you, in all my years, I can't recall a private company that I have to candidly, many have never heard of, getting this kind of attention and scrutiny. What do you think's going on here?
This is what happens when you work to change things. And first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world.
Narcissistic personality disorder is a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. At this point, Elizabeth knew full well what she'd been doing, committing fraud and fudging results. She was well aware she was not going to change the world.
And I have to say, I personally was shocked to see that the Journal would publish something like this when we had sent them over 1,000 pages of documentation demonstrating that the statements in their piece were false. But we're doing things differently, and we're working to make a difference, and that means people raise questions, and that's okay. But
remember, often when people use "but," what they're saying is, forget everything I just said, here is the truth. It was most certainly not okay for her to be questioned and disbelieved.
In this case, it was pretty disappointing to see that after every single one of the sources that we spoke with, who the Journal had contacted, told us that the statements that were being attributed to them were false or misleading, and the only sources who were left were ones who wouldn't speak with us, who on their own website say that they now do business with LabCorp in their office, or in the other case.
This is classic narcissistic defense to discredit your opponents. Notice, she never speaks to their allegations of her company's wrongdoings, just to their motivation or character.
Demanded in writing that we pay them in cash upfront $2,500 for an hour to talk to them about their statements to the Journal.
Did the Journal
those
know
things
what you
weren't
just
referenced.
said? Did the Journal know everything that you just said before they wrote the article?
Of course, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Jim Cramer had been championing her for years at this point. His support was clearly slipping. He knows the Wall Street Journal is unlikely to print unvetted or incorrect sources. In this interview, he begins to press her to defend her company. In a probable fight or flight response, she chooses to fight.
At the same time, pretty negative article, so let me ask you, I know that you've talked to us about your partnership with Walgreens, one of the best retailers out there, great drugstore chain, Cleveland Clinic, one of obviously the most admired health care facilities. Did either call you today and say, you know what, we got to rethink our relationship?
Absolutely not. We're incredibly blessed to have partners who have worked with us, have actually seen our technology, and unfortunately in this case we offered to bring our technology to the Journal offices to show them the technology they were questioning running firsthand, and they denied that request to show it to them. But Cleveland Clinic, Walgreens, so many of the other partners that we have seen our technology, they've worked with us, they've used our systems, and they understand what we're doing, and they understand that when you try to change things, people react to it.
A big loss for Theranos. Walgreens now cutting ties with the embattled blood testing company. The drugstore chain says it's ending a partnership with Theranos as regulators mull whether to impose sanctions against the Silicon Valley firm. Walgreens will stop offering Theranos' services at its stores, marking the latest blow for the company.
All right, so let me get this straight. You offered to bring the test to the Journal, so presumably you would have been comfortable with, say, 100 different people at the Journal taking your test, matching them against Quest or LabCorp, and you were perfectly willing to have that happen.
Absolutely. We offered to bring our devices to their offices.
And what did they say as a reason why they didn't want to do that?
Because the story needed to get out immediately.
Well, let's talk about that.
Even though they'd been reporting on it.
They said, again, because first of all, it's the Wall Street Journal. This is not the National Enquirer here. But they did say that they, after they pursued you for an interview for 5 months. You declined interview requests from the Journal for more than 5 months. Last week, the company said she would be available, but her schedule didn't allow it before the publication of this article. Why not just sit down with them? I mean, it's a reputable outfit. Why not just sit down with them months ago and explain your side of the story?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the Journal actually had a member of their editorial board write the very first piece on Theranos, and that person, Joe Rago, came out to our lab, saw our systems, and really got insight into our work. That was about a year ago. I published my op-ed in the Journal, and
she is trying very hard to lessen the impact by telling us that the Wall Street Journal previously supported her, and she has even been published in an op-ed. She will move on to try and discredit the reporter, as she knows she will not get away with discrediting the Wall Street Journal to Jim Cramer.
Unfortunately, in this case, the reporter focused on sources who we knew in 2004 and 2005, who were the people who had said to me that there was no way I was going to succeed and be able to build this kind of company, and focused on questions like asking whether I could prove that I actually invented the patents that my name were on. And those are not very fruitful conversations in the context of engagement. But when we had the opportunity to engage with more people in the Journal, we said we absolutely were ready to sit down and do that.
Jim Cramer just asked her why she avoided the Journal's interview requests for 5 months. Now she's saying she welcomed it. Jim Cramer's face changes subtly, but seems to say, what is she talking about?
And unfortunately, they offered a 3-day window in which we had told them I was not available before it was quote-unquote necessary to get this
She is
public.
trying to deflect responsibility onto anyone but herself. They asked for 5 months for her time. She finally acquiesces by giving them a small window of opportunity beyond their publishing date. People with nothing to hide nothing.
Well, let's talk about the substance of some of the charges that are raised. For instance, here's just an outright sentence, an assertion. Theranos also hasn't disclosed publicly that it does the vast majority of its tests with traditional machines bought from companies like Siemens AG. True or false?
He asks flatly, true or false. This woman cannot answer a question that succinctly. She has a habit of filling up the air with a lot of buzzwords that people think sound impressive. But if you listen closely, she says nothing. Here is an example of her trying to word salad Bill Clinton.
And has 6 of the fastest growing countries in the world, still has vast swaths of its land totally dark at night. Do you believe that it's possible for us to scale up with distributed solar power rather than centralized as quick as we did with the cell phone? And if so, and if that were your business, if you had to quit what you're doing today and start there, how would you do it? And how would you do it?
Okay, note, his question is, can we scale solar power in developing nations as quickly as we scaled up cell service? And if so, how would you do it? If you can make sense of her answer, please email me at thenarcalert@gmail.com.
Very first, I know that.
I'm such a huge believer in technology, and I think especially right now, we're at an incredible time in terms of new technology and the ability to apply technology in a scalable way toward solving some of these problems. So I would look at it in the context of some of the renewable solutions that we already have, and in the context of empowering, connecting individuals with access to those solutions, and in the context of creating markets around them. I think that there's real opportunity to actually create an ecosystem in which people can financially benefit from these solutions, and I think that's going to drive an adoption. I think in developing economies, there's a revenue stream associated with that, and the more we can turn even already some of the technologies that we have into markets, the more that we can fuel, I believe, local growth and individual engagement in beginning to adopt some of these solutions.
In my humble opinion, this is the face of a scared person. She knows she has said nothing, and although this word vomit, spiked with buzzwords of the day, may work on some, it is unlikely to work on the likes of Bill Clinton and Jack Ma, and she knows it.
And just related to that, Jack, you answer it, and then I'll ask you one final question.
She knows she is out of her league. They know she's not able to contribute as they assumed. Bill spends most of the remaining 20 or so minutes talking only to Jack Ma, and she says nothing.
So this is taken completely out of context. Starting when we launched our services in 2013, we put on our website that we do venous testing. So blood draws from the arm the traditional way. And starting in 2015, we announced, and it was published in San Francisco paper, in Fortune. I talked about it in an interview I did with Forbes, that we made a decision to expand our test menu to include all the specialty and esoteric tests that are traditionally run only very infrequently, but cost a huge amount of money. And we believe, as part of what we do, that one of our greatest innovations is making these tests available at extremely low cost. Okay. And so we expanded our test menu and made all these tests available through venous draws. We updated our website to reflect that. And so yes, now we have a huge number of tests that are available through our lab, but instead of charging $10,000 for them, we're charging $2.99. Okay. And this is listed on the Walgreens website. We've put it in our own press, and it's been out there.
Once again, she is deflecting and not truly answering the question he asked her. He will now ask it in a simpler, more direct way that is harder to avoid. For most.
Well, how many tests can your device, Edison, do? The Wall Street Journal says it can only do 15 out of 240.
Yeah, so we had communicated to the Wall Street Journal that we have submitted over 130 pre-submissions to FDA with tests running on our proprietary devices, and have been taking those through the FDA submission process. Every test that we offer in our laboratory can run on our proprietary devices. We bring tests up on our proprietary devices based on the frequency with which they're run. So at any given point in time, we're running the tests that are most commonly ordered. But we've also done a lot of work as part of this commitment that we've made, and it's been very controversial that we've actually become the first company advocating for FDA regulation of lab-developed tests. And as part of that, we have said that we think that every lab-developed test really should go through the FDA submission process, and so we've been consistent with it. And in fact, we even just recently took our nanotainers through the FDA clearance process and sent submissions in for those. And as part of that process, we're not even using our nanotainers except for FDA-cleared assays, so that every single thing that runs on our platform is getting to the point that it's going to be FDA-cleared.
Well, how many tests can your device, Edison, do? One last question. Obviously, there's some dispute here. The journal doesn't make stuff up.
Kramer is letting her know that he, in no uncertain terms, believes what he is reading, and he's pushing her to come up with an explanation.
Why not just have the study of hundreds of people, Theranos versus Quest LabCorp? Just say, listen, we're willing to do it. We're willing to do it now. Is LabCorp, is Quest Corp? It's Quest. Just say it right now on air. Quest LabCorp, we want to do a head-to-head. 200, 300, 400 patients. What do you say? Yes?
We've already done it. We've already done it, absolutely. And it's actually even published in our FDA decision summary from this summer, from a 900-patient study where we got FDA clearance of the exact system that the journal is questioning and demonstrated venous versus finger stick across a huge number of patients. It was 889, I think, for that test. And we've done that over and over again for every single test.
Excellent. Elizabeth Holmes, founder, chair, and CEO of Theranos. Thank you for coming on Mad Money and from the Harvard Med School. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Read the journal. Listen to our interview. You make up your mind. Stick with it.
What a story. Only a narcissist could pull off something like that. This trial will be interesting to follow, though. Being a bunch of rich white people, I doubt they will get 20 full years. But who knows? Let's hope the trials of Weinstein and Epstein have started a precedent.
1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome to the Narc Alert. I will say this next video is highly requested, but it doesn't come without its own share of special disclaimers. Tonight, we're going to take a look at Amber Heard. Now, the reason I've hesitated in doing Amber before now is, quite frankly, she has been publicly diagnosed as having histrionic personality disorder as well as borderline personality disorder. But nowhere did any of her doctors specifically say narcissistic personality disorder, so I felt safer to avoid her. But you kept asking, and I'm certainly interested, and to be honest, she shows a lot of traits that fall within the cluster B of personality disorders, of which NPD is one. And as we all know, we can show traits of a disorder without actually having that disorder. So all of that said, let's take a look at Amber Heard's latest interview.
Well, I have no bad feelings or ill will towards him at all. I know that might be hard to understand, or it might be really easy to understand. If you've just ever loved anyone, it should be easy.
Well, I guess for me, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. So given that, she clearly has a lot of love left for Johnny. There you have it, our quick look at Amber Heard. Is she a narcissist? I'll let you decide. Please don't forget to hit the like button if you like the video, and I would love it if you could subscribe. We've also got really cheap channel memberships at $1.99. It helps keep Rio in food. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Until we meet again, please be kind, and hasta luego.